So did
We
you
are
get
now
the
recording.
attachment?
Let's see. Oh, I got an attachment that has a text. I think that's, oh no, that's somebody else who sent me an email with no subject. Let's see.
And did you get the attachment?
Yeah, the attachment is there.
Okay, good.
Oh. Oh yeah, oh I see it. Okay. It had no subject, so it sort of, wasn't on my radar. Yeah, okay, I see it. I can actually print that out, I think. So I can look at it while we're in the
You don't need to know
meeting.
what it's about,
Yeah. That's
I'm in a
good.
hurry. So let's get started, Grace, so we can get through quicker.
Okay, we are recording, so we're all ready to go.
Okay. Are we on?
Yes.
Good evening. This is Esther McCullough of Fairfax County History Commission, and we're meeting for the Ethnic and Oral History Committee. We're going to do an electronic meeting script. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically, the Ethnic and Oral History Committee needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with all applicable laws. These motions address this compliance. First, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state their name and location. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. And Stutz and Barnes.
Ann Barnes is here, and I am in Gunston, Virginia.
Barbara Peters. Sally Lyons. Tammy
Manarino, Mount Vernon District.
Okay. Cheryl, Phyllis, Lynn, Sophie.
Subi Medi, McLean, Dranesville District.
Wonderful. So we do not have a quorum at this time. We will, however, discuss what was on the slide agenda that I sent you. But we must finish this. I move that at this point I pass the gavel to Ann Barnes so that I may make appropriate motions. I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify for the record that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
I second the motion.
Okay, and it's been moved and second. Carry the motion through.
The motion is carried through.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. So the need for electronic meeting. Second, I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented safely or practically. As a result, I further move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-415-655-0001 and that entering the access code, which is 2348-600-5294.
All right, I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those that oppose? Motion carries. Finally, I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify that the matters on its agenda today relate to the COVID-19 emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Ethnic and Oral History Committee lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Second.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those that oppose? The motion carries. Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay.
I'm missing one
So,
page.
I was
You-
excited to get the toolkit from Sylvie. And Sylvie, I'm going to let you tell us about it.
Esther, should I pass this gavel back to you?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Should we wait for Tammy to get back?
Yes.
Okay, you have the gavel back.
Okay.
My printer
So-
ran out of paper, so I
What
had
does
to.
straw man mean on your document, Subi?
So, yeah, I had promised an outline, and this is definitely more than that. This is sort of evolved into more a rough set of guidelines. But it was very important for me, the introductory section was very important for me because those were questions that I was grappling with when you all were talking about doing this. I wanted to know why are we doing it? And what are we doing? And what are we going to do with it once we have done it? And then we also had in the past sessions questions about, so who is our target population? Who are we going to interview? So I did some very rough look through on the internet, and there are some fascinating major international organizations on oral history. It's very, very well developed and all that stuff. So I borrowed definitely some of the wisdom from all of that that I saw on Google, but not, I didn't get a chance to go through every single source. But I thought this was enough to get us started, just so that we can have a discussion.
Okay.
I'm not going to read what I've submitted because I think everybody needs to read it on their own and mark it up. The idea was that it should generate enough discussion and critique, that this was just to put on the table for us to get started and react to. Let me talk about the target population a little bit. So these are the 6 categories that we had mentioned. But for me, just identifying public servants and elected officials or any of these categories is not enough. For me, I would like to know why. Why are we picking on public servants? Why are we picking on teachers? What is it that they can offer us in terms of what we are trying to gather, right? For me, any kind of disciplined research needs to have a premise, right? So what is the premise we are starting with? And those things are not clear to me. So
I was going to say, I can give a little bit of insight because I've been doing this research on the renaming of Fort Belvoir in 1935, and I was trying to dip into some of these autobiographical records, statements, letters that people had written, and I wish that there was more from public servants and elected officials, on decision making. So, for instance, we have the resulting decision from the newspaper that Fort Belvoir was renamed. But what were all of the reasons and who was involved and what roles did they play? That can come from these personal accounts. And so I for one would like to see, public servants more document what things were like and why decisions were made, because often they're not made for just one reason. There's multiple perspectives that come in there. And I think teachers also would be helpful for that reason, because they're in a position to sort of in the center of the community, to be hearing from different types of students, different households, and sort of commenting on the general behaviors and trends that they're seeing over time. So those would be two reasons that just pop into my head right away, just from my experience this week. So
yeah, that's excellent, Tammy. So we need to make sure, I think, Esther, you have the questionnaire in your hands. So we need to make sure that the questionnaire asks questions that will elicit responses on the decision-making factors, that will elicit responses on what is it like to be in the eye of the bull or eye of the storm, and see an event unfold or see a public policy unfold. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I think when we drafted these questions, we gave them enough to be able to chew on it and give us a discussion. Well, I'm trying to put my hands on the questions we gave them, and they're not coming up. But they were asked to relate how they got into the servant role in the county, and what motivated them, and what were the things that were accomplished during their term, so that it gave us an idea of what went on during that particular time that they were in office.
Yeah, I kind of remember that with the supervisors, former supervisors, you guys were asking about sort of what things they were most proud of, or what issues were the most challenging or difficult, and hopefully that would elicit some of that. But I think Suvi's right, and that's almost something that we need to tailor per person, knowing what position they're in or what type of school they're in, or what background they come from, specifically what their job is. I think that's something we really should take the time. I mean, it's easy when we have a template to just go in cold with a template, but I think that time is well invested to, like you said, to elicit the answers that are going to be valuable to historians in the future. I think that's a great point.
Yes.
So
and did you want to chime in, because you did interviews? Did the questions lead to answers that were useful?
Oh, yes. The one that I'm thinking about is the interview that I had with Supervisor Hoffman about a month and a half ago. A lot of the questions really, they were still fresh in his mind, and responded to how he, you know, approached different scenarios the way that he did, and arrived at the decision that he did. And it's really a lot of regurgitating their time in public service. So they were gentle enough, but they were thought-provoking enough.
Yeah, I think a successful interview will also require that the interviewer studies the events of the narrator's time.
Mhm.
So, for example, anybody we are interviewing who was involved with Fort Belvoir, we going into that interview must know that this person had something to do with it, so we can ask those pointed questions, right? So there is, I think, I just jotted it down. I think as a pre-interview prep action, we need to do our homework first before we talk to the narrator, right?
Okay, I understand that.
For example,
When you deal with a professional like a former board of supervisor person, just asking the question brings it out. But I understand what you're saying about the interviewer knowing the subject matter that might elicit the best question and answer.
Right. Like the example I think of is David Rubenstein. I think David Rubenstein is a genius interviewer. I mean, he is remarkable because because he's either read the book of the person he's interviewing or he's studied up on the same period of history. And so it's like a conversation, and he draws the interviewee out on certain topics. So in a way, he already kind of knows the answer to the question. And I think that comes from preparation. So I'd love to sort of hear David Rubenstein's view of how to prepare for an interview. I think that would be amazing to read. Has he written an autobiography? I don't know. So just a thought.
I think every good interviewer, does that basic preparation, so that they can ask those questions. And does anybody remember, Tammy, was it you who suggested the teachers and that period, 1950 to 1980?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think of who that might have been. Was Mary Lipsy? Is she on this committee? I can't remember.
No, Mary is not. Maybe it was Phyllis, because that's what they're studying in AAHI, trying to find those people. I tried very hard to find some this week, and they're deceased for the most part.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think one of the the gaps would be to go through each one of these target groups and find the rationale for why we chose them. The other thing that's missing for me is the time frame. For example, we are trying to capture the oral history of which time period? Because for me, it's when you say Native Americans, it can be thousands of years ago, right? And then we come down to the modern day supervisors. So I think it's just way too broad a scope. And I think we need to figure out a way of narrowing it down. I mean, do we really need Native Americans? If we do, then can we say post civil war or something to make it more manageable for
Yeah.
African Americans as well. Are we talking from the time Columbus landed, or the first time the first set of captures happened in West Africa? What are we talking about? I think in every single thing we are talking about, we need to tighten our scope.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's a good point. There's, I was kind of being humorous about it last time, where I was like, let's find the oldest people in every neighborhood and interview them. But I was really genuinely serious because we want to catch people before we lose them. And so, so if you're looking to catch people who are, I mean, that can help us bound our dates, is to say, like, we want everybody we want to talk to lots of people who are over 80 years old or over 70 years old. And so that'll give us, kind of a period that we want to talk to. We could
Okay.
also use the National Register kind of idea that that we're looking for more than 50 years ago. That's one idea. Native Americans and African Americans both, I think, are different categories in that the record, our written record, is so poor in some of those areas that we need to, we're in a makeup sort of situation where we need to fill in. And some of those histories, even though they happened long ago, we're not going to find anybody still alive who was alive during those periods. But the oral traditions have been passed down. And so, I kind of go back to the same thing. If we catch the elders, from these groups, hopefully we're going to capture, the oldest information we can from those people. So I guess that's kind of my gut feel, is let's get the older people.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's an excellent way of discerning the time frame. So let's just say that the oldest person living right now is 100 years old. Okay, just for argument's sake. So this is 2021. So let's just say our time frame would be the early 20th century to the early 21st century. Does that make sense? Or yeah.
So you might even want to say, late 20th century, early 20th century to late 20th century, because 50 years ago would be, I'm not good at backward math. So
Yeah, except that we are interviewing supervisors, right? They don't go back that far.
Well,
yeah, that's true.
no, the supervisors were one segment.
Mm.
And of course, we would not interview the current supervisors, the city supervisors. So only those that were previously in office. So I think what we're talking about is applicable to the next couple of categories,
Yeah.
because I wanted to do oral history interviews years ago, and it was frowned upon. It was not accepted. And back then, we
Interesting.
had the older citizens. Now, 20 years later, they're gone.
Yeah.
So if we take the elders and use that that time frame of, what did you say, early 20th
Mm-hmm.
through
Early 20th century through early 21st, but Tammy's suggestion is early 20th through late 20th.
Or I would say you might want to cut it off at the year 2000. I don't know. Just to bound it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. as far as the Native American segment is concerned, I hope to get some leads from the history conference because it's not been really brought into the history. So, like Tammy said, we'll just have to go with the elder of the group, whatever they can share
Mhm.
by
Yeah, and
oral
there's-
tradition.
So who do we have coming to the history conference? What Native American groups? Do we have the Piscataway Conoy coming to that?
We have the Powhatan. There is a lady named Rose that's going to speak and tell about the tribe names.
Mhm.
And then we had someone else that was going to tell more about the Indian history.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that that would reveal some leads for us.
Right. Yeah, that would be good. I know that we have the Piscataway Conoy is right across the river from the Mount Vernon area. And they have two different organizations, that have kind of come up, and I think they have state recognition now, but not federal recognition. But they've been organizing themselves along the last decade. They're just getting more and more organized, which has been great. And so that's another lead because they really don't separate Maryland and Virginia. Like, to them, like
Right.
Potomac River is not a border, it's Main Street, and people lived on both sides. And so they carry some of our Fairfax County history too. So I think there are a number of groups that we can reach out to, but I wouldn't be surprised if they welcome the recording of their stories. I think they might want assistance doing that.
Well, as I understand it, there were 6 tribes, or there are 6 tribes.
Mm.
3 actually in the county currently, is what I understand.
Cool.
So maybe we'll get further leads on who to contact and to ask these questions if they want their history recorded.
Yeah. And that'll be interesting just to kind of find out, like, are there things that they're sensitive about that they might not want recorded? Do they have any concerns on that? Yeah, so I think you're right. The history conference is that's a good starting point to.
Right. Now, as far as African Americans, there is a real thrust to get that African American history in the books. The sensitivity years ago, I think, went away with the generation of, say, my grandmother, because she would not talk about her history.
Mm.
I asked when I was a child, and she said it's too painful. So
Understandable.
different groups have different methods, different ideas about their history and how public it should be. But I think the African American as a whole would like to be included because we did contribute so much to this country.
Definitely.
So the time factor there, I think, could be the same.
Hmm.
What do
I
you
think,
think,
Right.
Anne?
I think the time factor needs to be uniform across the board, don't you?
Yeah, I
What
do.
time vector again are we talking
The
about?
time frame, that time frame of the time of history we are trying to capture.
Okay, did we decide just in the last half an hour or so a certain time frame that we want to focus in on?
So we were talking about a couple of options, and no, and we have not made any decisions. This
No.
is just
Okay,
discussion.
I thought I missed something. Okay.
So one was early 20th century to early 21st century. The
Yeah.
other one was early 20th century to the year 2000. you know, or it could be because it's oral history coming down from generations. If someone who is 85 years old now can relate history going back a couple of 100 years ago because it's oral generational stories that come down. And I raised it just because I think we need to know what we are capturing. We need to figure out how far back we need to go.
Well, I think in the case of the African American, you need to go back as far as, say, the end of slavery.
The 1860s?
Yes,
Okay.
because a number of significant things were accomplished by those people that were newly freed after that Civil War. And you still have organizations and institutions that exist that were started in the 1860s.
Right.
And this is very significant because the interviewer needs to be trained then to probe and ask follow-up questions that will take them back that far.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that they are not just confined to their existing experiences.
Right. That's right. But
And has some reaction.
Oh, I'm on mute. Oh, okay. Um, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about my own experience, because in my own experience, Anne Barnes, maiden name, in my own experience on my father's side, and we have Native Americans in my lineage on the paternal side of my family, and so it find a lot of those types of things with, if we're talking about going way back, and then people repeating historical accounts based on oral history that was given to them over the course of years. It, it's plausible that things like that would build, people would really want to know about that part of their history too. And living here in Fairfax County would be no differently. You know, if you're looking at certain groups and you're looking at a certain period of time of history that they can offer or share, it wouldn't be surprising for those types of things to come out. Sorry about that.
well, I agree, Anne, because I'm from Texas. This is not Fairfax County that I'm going to speak about, but yes, I have the Indian lineage too.
Uh-huh.
So that could be interesting if it came out of an interview.
Mhm. Yeah, there's actually a woman who, she wrote a book not too long ago. I think it's called The Other Madisons, and she's a descendant of James Madison through one of his enslaved women, and she was made. I'm trying to think of the name of the term. It's a West African term. It's like the person who carries the stories of the family. Griot,
Yes,
Griot.
Griot.
So she just wrote this book because she, was the griot of the family, and so she's now written it all down, this oral history that's been passed down to her, from James Madison's time. So that goes way before the Civil War. But really, I mean, valuable, really interesting information. I really want to read that book. I think that would be fascinating to know, and wonderful that that there's this tradition of handing down the stories. It's so valuable. I think that's great. I get excited about that.
That sounds like a fascinating book to read.
yes.
Yeah.
Is it published?
Yeah,
I think it came out in 2000, let me see, 2017. She just, the way I became aware of hers, I think she just spoke this month at the Virginia Museum in Richmond. And I think her talk was in October, and I think I missed it, but they record all of their talks. But I didn't know about that story, but I thought that sounds really.
What's the title?
The Other Madisons.
Okay,
I think
I
it's,
remember hearing about that.
yeah, just sounds really good. Yeah, this article that I just found is from 2017, so it's apparently been out for a while. But yeah, you know, and how interesting, and this is the opportunity that we've talked about this in the African American History Initiative, you know, the opportunity to, you know, capture these oral histories and then, you know, compare them with the historic record. Not that they always have to be 100% backed up, but just to see where you can make the ties, I think is really interesting. And then, of course, DNA testing and all of that adds another whole
Or
fascinating.
to see the effects
Yeah.
of,
Oh, for sure.
events that occurred at the time.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think that's, I mean, talk about enriching the record. I mean, I think that's what oral history is all about, is enriching the
Yeah,
historic
yeah,
record that you have.
I am completely with you, Tammy, about the comparative analysis.
Yeah.
I think we need to go just beyond documenting events that we need to, and I think it could be like a graduate student research. It could be a capstone research of, assigning it to a group of students to do that. On the target population, the other thing I threw in there, again, just for discussion, because I feel we need to bind it again, is how many people per group that we should interview. So I said at least 3 per group, and it can be more, but we should strive for at least 3. That was a random number. The question in my mind that I was grappling with was, what's our sample size? Okay, when you do research, you have a sample size, and the sample size is a very thought through process. Like, what number will give you enough information? So based on your experience in doing oral history so far, how many interviews have we done? So we are looking at talking to the former supervisors right now. How many have we been able to capture?
Okay, we've been able to capture 6. And we have a suggested list of some for December, attempting to get 3 or 4 more. The difficulty is that they're retired and they've scattered and they're doing their thing and don't want to be bothered sometimes. But just finding them is the difficulty at this point.
So we have done 6. We may do another 3 or 4. So instead of 3, which to me was a little bit too few, should we say the sample size of 10 per group? And that'll make it 60 people that we'll interview. And what is manageable for us? And
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good question, because
are we extending this project for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? I mean, I'm trying to
Right.
scope it out.
I see you're trying to understand. Originally, Subi, this was a project to interview citizens, okay? But because we felt we needed to do some training for interviewers, because we don't plan to put our commissioners through the ringer trying to do all these interviews. We were doing the first 10 or 12 and using that as a teaching tool to be able to say, this is how an interview should be conducted. And then give some instruction to citizen, just plain citizen in a district on how to do the interviews themselves.
I see. Oh, okay. So we really don't need to go this far of setting ourselves to interview all these groups of people.
No, I don't think we do. I think
It's good to characterize the groups that that we want to target and that we want to encourage people
to do.
yes.
Do we feel any sense of responsibility that once we do this first group and we develop a teaching tool, what do? We just goes on the web and then we think that it may get used? Or
In
do
this county, we're uncovering some things that have not been in the history books. If we even touch the African American history and the Native American, we will get information that's never been out there before.
but how?
What I'm saying is we anticipated the information being sent to the Virginia room, and the Virginia room could then be a source of research for future people that are writing papers and doing studies and things like that.
Okay, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just following your description, if we do the first set of interviews, which is the public servants,
Mm-hmm.
and we use the questionnaire and develop a training tool from it, the results of the interview will go to the Virginia room
Right.
as information source. But the tool itself will go up, be
You're
public.
asking where it would go?
Yeah,
It would go to the supervisor of districts. So each district would get a tool, and the supervisor would be encouraged to let people in his district be trained to do interviews in his district. And that's how you reach more or less the whole county, because there aren't enough of us to do all of it.
okay. So do we have a sense of confidence that once we disseminate the toolkit, because I mean, this is by no means a toolkit. If we disseminate the toolkit, that the supervisors will then ensure that it is being used to capture the history of these other categories of people.
I think it was encouraging when they suggested we do more. The board of supervisors suggested this in a meeting, and they can see the holes in the history. So
Yeah.
as we assemble this, we would want to talk it up with the board of supervisors.
Right. And I think that then becomes sort of, the ethnic and oral history committee's next job is, instead of creating the toolkit, like managing and continuing to encourage the toolkit, and maybe even tracking, okay, so let's look at how many oral histories were captured this year in the different target groups that we're looking for. And when you do that, if we go back to the Board of Supervisors and then report on that in our annual report or in some other method, that encourages a little competition between the, magisterial districts, in that,
Yes.
no supervisor wants it to be said that there were no oral histories collected during the year. So everybody, that becomes something that that they want to do their share. And I think Esther's right. I think they recognize that it's important that there are holes to fill. But I think that it will need some cheerleading from this group, and some accountability, and some promotion advocacy.
Right, right.
Word, but yes.
But in a previous Board of Supervisors meeting, they did emphasize they'd like to hear more.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And the Virginia Room does a good job of tracking what their assets are and the kinds of things that they're gaining over the course of a year. And so they can be another cheerleader that's helping this to happen, and encouraging it. And maybe even, they do have, I know I've talked about StoryCorps before, how they have an app on the phone where you can record oral histories and stuff. Maybe the libraries have a little cubicle where you can go in and and use the toolkit on yourself, or bring somebody into a library and do the recording there. Maybe that's something that can be leveraged, maybe not right away, but down the line.
So let me ask you this. Moving forward, I mean, nobody's had a chance to read what I have, put down on a piece of paper. So in terms of guiding the reviewer, our colleagues, what are we asking them to do? Can you give us some guidance? I mean, when you say a teaching tool, you certainly have something in mind, like a vision. So my question is, how far are we from a teaching tool? And how can we take this and make it a teaching tool? So in terms of the questionnaire, I have said that it's attached. That's all I have done. So I think to make it a teaching tool, I would need some guidance on what your vision is.
Okay. We had several meetings ago, perhaps before you joined, we had a session on how to interview and what not to do and those kinds of things. And you remember that? Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that was quite some time ago.
Yes.
Yes.
So what we would do is get those notes out and pull them together on how we would instruct or suggest an interview go.
Okay, if you can get it to me, those notes, then I'll make sure they are incorporated here.
Okay. Because you've got some of the points that we hit, like the lead person that's interviewing should be conducted in a quiet room, those kinds of elements. You did some interview process that covered some of the things that we had. We also covered the fact that if it's an elderly person, they might need to be in their own surroundings. They might need a companion to guide them. So I can certainly bring those back.
Okay, that'd be very helpful.
Yes.
Was that, I'm trying to think of what, I don't think I was at that meeting. Is that during COVID that we had that meeting, and would it have been recorded then?
No, it was before COVID. It was some time ago, like Ann said.
Okay. I have trouble remembering what happened last week, so.
Listen, I can't put a subject in an email today, so I understand. But yes, that is possible to bring that. And I see you have post-interview also. Yes.
That's good. Yeah, this looks like a great document, Subi. I'm excited to dig in, but I just read through the first couple paragraphs. I think they're right on. This is great.
And there are so many of us absent. I think we should review the document
Yeah.
and come back.
My other question is, I don't know how the commission and the committees provide feedback. I mean, do you guys do redlining in a Word document, or how do you provide I mean, how would I receive the feedback or your edits?
I would say some people know how to do that, show changes, but not all. I think
Is it that difficult? Couldn't we learn that?
it's not that hard on Word documents. We probably could just provide, maybe, I'm sure that there are videos out there. We could just attach a video to the email that shows how to do track changes, if that's helpful to you, Subi.
No, it not necessarily. I just want to know I'm trying to manage my expectations.
Yeah.
So I want to know how I'm going to receive feedback. It's all oral, because I've been taking notes from
From tonight.
Or is someone going to write me a couple of paragraphs of feedback?
I think it should definitely be in writing.
Okay, so that's one good instructions from you. When you send this out, just say provide feedback by, give a date,
Right.
and say in writing. And it doesn't matter if the writing is a Word document or an email. I'm very flexible.
Okay, provide.
Yes, a deadline, and then also a reminder to go out a few days before the deadline, I think is super helpful.
So people can read and be prepared.
Mhm.
Okay, so our next meeting would possibly be the 16th of November.
Okay.
If I say provide feedback that first week of November.
I'd say by the 2nd of November, and then that gives you a week to munge it all together and then put something out before the 16th. I think that would be great.
Okay.
Homework, I love it.
And Esther, you might give us some guidance on what you are looking for in like when you say a teaching tool. What are you talking, a set of slides? Are you talking what is your vision for it? Am I in the right direction here, or how?
You're in the right direction. What we talked about is even a model so that we video tape ourselves, two people, one the interviewer and one the interviewee.
Role modeling, okay.
So that you get that role model and then the written instruction, because people learn differently. So you've got these written instructions as a guideline. And then you've got the video with the role modeling.
Okay.
Okay, let me pull those notes. Gosh, I think it was 2019 maybe. And put this back together and send it out with what you have there and get people to respond. That's good, because the people that aren't here definitely need to weigh in.
Mhm.
Any other suggestions?
No, I think that sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds very good.
Now, I still want to know what straw man means on your document.
So strawman is a word that I came across when I was working with the defense people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
It's like a rough draft. It's like a
Okay.
mock-up.
Okay. Okay.
We probably could look up the origin of it, but I have to tell you, like, my idea of straw man is that you can shoot arrows at it. That's like the image in my mind is, so it's something to put up there and you shoot arrows at it and then you improve it,
Yeah.
Okay.
so
Yeah. So
A
in my
working
note-
draft. Okay.
it's
it
a
is,
draft.
yeah.
So, in my note to you, Esther, I said this is a rough draft for people to critique. So that's
Right.
it. You just put something on the table and then rip it apart.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if you don't start from somewhere, you're never going to get there. You have to,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, I just hadn't heard the term in this context.
I worked in
Then
the
I
so we
ask
used-
questions I don't know. I have no shame about asking. Okay.
And
So,
I'm actually going to Google it and see if I can find the origin of straw man now.
I actually, when I put it down on the document, I actually went back. I said, okay, I'm going to use the word strawman, but let me make sure it means what I want it. So I did go back and look at the dictionary.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Okay.
I love studying those kinds of things. Like, how did we end up with that?
Well, usually I will ask Siri,
Yes.
Safari, tell me what this means.
Yes, it's good.
So, I think we've pretty much given ourselves a task.
Love it.
Because the questions, I agree, the questions would need to be tailored to the group, if at all possible.
So we have the date, 16th of November, our next,
Yes, November 16th.
all right.
That sound doable?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I was going to ask for release forms to be sent to me, but those people aren't here. When I get the list of people that could be interviewed in December, the previous, the former Board of Supervisor members, when I get a date from Channel 16, first of all, and then get a list based on those people I have contact with, I'll send it back to the members and see if there's someone you want to interview. So that will come, I'm sure, in November. They don't give me dates very, very soon. And then I'll send out the letters and find a time and date for the interview. And that way you'll know what you're volunteering for.
Is Tom Davis one of those?
Who's that?
Tom Davis,
We're working on that one.
okay. I was gonna
And
ask,
you
was
showed
gonna
an
ask-
interest in doing that one. And
say it again, I'm sorry.
you were interested in doing
yeah,
Tom.
I know him, yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can get him to talk about certain things and, yeah.
Okay.
I know him
Good.
quite well.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
That's good. Anything else?
No, I think it was a good discussion.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes, very good.
Mm.
And thank you, Subi. You're like a catalyst.
I love it.
You're
So-
getting us together. No, really, I appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm
So-
a big fan of having homework assignments after meetings, something that's due at the next meeting so that we can make sure that we're moving forward. So I'm a big fan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Not coming to a meeting empty-handed. I
Mhm.
like that.
Yep.
So we'll continue that mode of operation.
I think that'd be great.
And I see Subi has some references here.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
very particular about if I'm using someone's idea that I don't use.
Yes. Yes.
I started by putting endnotes, then I said it was just getting too crowded, so I just put the reference. People can always go back to those websites.
Right. Right.
It's great.
Okay. Well, unless something else catches our attention, I think we can adjourn.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Esther, you said that you got those releases that I sent to you, right?
Yes, thank you. I got them. Yes,
Wonderful.
thank
Thanks.
you very much.
Yeah. Well, it was good to see all of you guys.
Yes, it is.
Bye now.
The others missed it.
Mhm.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you. Good
Yeah.
night.
Yes,
Thank
hi.
you guys. It was great. Thank you, Grace.
Good night.